in my possession is a valuable list of people that need to be cyberbullied. It's a lot smaller than I thought it was. Now, very quick disclaimer before we start this video off, but naturally, I did not get early access to Marvel Rivals. I am certainly not special enough for that, but I like to think I know what I'm talking about.
Before we start, huge shout out to Val Starlight for being chill enough to let me borrow some of their gameplay for this video. It is a massive help, very much appreciated, and I'll be leaving a link to not only their channel, but also the video that I used itself. So thanks again, it helped a bunch.
And as soon as I heard about this game, it immediately piqued my interest. As someone who, well, used to consider themselves primarily a hero shooter player, I can't help but feel like very excited, right? With not only Marvel Rivals on the horizon, but also Deadlock looks really good as well, and is a game that I am also very interested in playing too. But of course, I am not cool enough to be invited to any of these games. So naturally, all I can really do is sit back and watch other people's gameplay. And that's exactly what I did. I essentially have went through and watched almost as much Marvel Rivals content as I could get my hands on, and I have some thoughts, some things that I'm very excited about, some things that I very like, as well as some concerns, and I think some things that might be a bit alarming for the game's development that I feel like are just not being addressed by absolutely anyone. First, I'm going to start off talking about the good, which is probably going to take 30 minutes. Then I'm going to start talking about the bad, which is probably going to take another 30 minutes. And if I'm going to estimate, this video is probably going to be about an hour long. So you're really strap in for this one, right? But the first thing I do want to talk about is the roster. As far as the roster goes, there's only 23 characters that were able to be played in the closed beta, as well as there is Captain America, Bucky, and Doctor Doom, which are confirmed for the launch of the game, and likely a few more other characters will be on launch as well. Overall, I definitely do like this roster, but I think there are some picks in here that are, of course, kind of weird, and would not be my first choice if I were to design a Marvel roster for pretty much anything. The first pick was Hela, which I found was kind of a weird pick. Her gameplay doesn't seem very unique or interesting at the very least, as well as I just don't think Thor is cool enough to get 2 villains, especially when someone like Iron Man gets no villains in the base roster, and Spider-Man only gets 1, which are much more popular characters overall. Loki, I feel like, was a given. I definitely wouldn't expect him not to have Loki, and I think Loki is definitely a good pick for this roster, but Hela, I feel like for base roster at the very least, is like, I don't know, I'm not the game designer. So then there's like Magic, which is like, really, Magic? In no world would I put Magic on a fucking base roster for any Marvel thing. This one really came out of the blue for me. They also have the Submariner or Neymar or whatever they're going by in this game. And seeing that one on the roster felt like seeing, I don't know, someone like Mojo or some shit. It's overall just a very strange pick, also because I just don't think his design fits whatsoever. But he's on the base roster, so I guess. But I don't know. I do feel like those are strange picks. But for someone like Neymar and Hela, I really can't help but feel that they were only put into this game because of their recent status in the MCU. And same kind of goes for Penny Parker as well, which I also thought was very strange. And at first glance, I thought she was only put into this game to serve as basically a diva function. But she is not a diva function at all. She serves nothing like diva. And the diva function, if anything, is the Hulk. So it just really, like, I don't know, caught me by surprise. It was just all kind of strange that they would put these characters in base roster. I could see them later on. But personally, I think, like, if you're going to make a base roster for a known IP, something like this, you're going to want to get all the heavy hitters, the big ones out. But on top of all that, I just feel like Penny's abilities don't really correlate at all with her as a character or like what she does, period. They seem to have just wanted to put these like mind traps abilities into the game and didn't really like know who to put them on, and just use Penny Parker because I don't know, she would sell, I guess. A lot of these picks are very random, as well as, like, Jeff and Luna Snow, which I was like, who the fuck are these? And I was, like, super confused. I almost had, like, a fucking identity crisis over these two, because I thought, like, I know my shit about when it comes to comics to some degree. And seeing 2 characters that I just didn't recognize or know at all really, really shocked me. But I looked them up, and I honestly don't feel bad for not knowing them. Jeff is from some, like, random 2018 comic as just, like, a thing in the background, basically. And then Luna Snow was essentially just made for some, like, Chinese Marvel mobile game, like, 3 years ago, right? So these aren't really, like, real characters at all. Now, I don't mind them putting more niche or nuanced characters onto the roster, but I feel like save that stuff for later down the line. I think, personally, there are a lot of good characters that I would rather have on the base roster before any of these. Some good picks that come to mind that are fairly well-known that I would like to see on the roster, and I think would have made good material for base roster, is maybe someone like Green Goblin or Ghost Rider, legit any of the Fantastic Four, which show no appearance at all, Hawkeye, and Cable would be a cool one, too. Not to mention, Cyclops, Wolverine, and Jean Grey don't make an appearance, which I would be genuinely surprised if 2 of those 3 characters don't make it onto the base roster. And I also just find it kind of only really weird that this base roster, just so far, has almost no X-Men. It basically just has Storm, Magneto, which I would consider more to be the X-Men villain, if anything, as well as, I guess you could consider Magic as well as X-Men, but I would consider Magic as much X-Men as, like, Deadpool. It's, like, X-Men adjacent. Personal ones of mine that I like, that I think would make cool characters, but I could see just not being in base roster, would be, like, something like Gambit, Psylocke, Nightcrawler, and Uncle Ben. Oh, wait, that's not right. Nova. Nova is certainly a personal favorite of mine, but I feel like he just gets absolutely no respect whatsoever, and I think he can make a pretty cool character as well. But I think it's kind of sad that nobody ever puts respect on his name, and he gets absolutely no recognition. I still don't think he's made an appearance in the MCU, but then again, I haven't really paid attention since, like, Infinity War, so I don't know. Mantis was also kind of a weird pick for me, but I think, I guess it kind of makes sense because they wanted you to have basically a full team, to be able to make a full team of Guardians. But the issue is with the Guardians, there's 3 fucking supports, which personally, I think Rocket Raccoon should just be DPS. I don't know why he's support. I find it very strange that he's a support. While some of these picks might be strange or unorthodox for a base roster, it might be a good thing that they're going with more niche, that they're not afraid to go with more niche or nuanced characters that make a fun experience or that can have a good game design over their just overall popularity, right? Which also another part of that is I think some of the picks will probably only put in to kind of diversify options with what characters you can, with what characters that are allowed. Like Jeff the Shark, for example, every character has to have that like haha funny kind of jokish character, and I think that the game might be like, I don't know, too serious to me, like serious type characters, so that's why Jeff the Shark is there. As well as I think like a lot of these like picks, like female picks, like Hela, Mantis, Penny Parker, and whatnot, I feel like are really just only in there because they needed, I think they might have felt that the game might be too much of a sausage fest without them, which of course everyone knows from Overwatch, female characters truly are what actually sells the game, a lot more than male characters, right? However, I still think there are plenty of good options for female characters like Black Widow, Jean Grey, Susan Storm, or as well as some of these characters and their gameplay designs, I feel like just don't really fit like what they actually are as characters. You know, I already discussed Penny Parker. I think it's kind of weird that she's like this weird like trap mine character. But among that, also Namor, which I find very strange that he has to be a turret function. There could definitely be better options for someone who is a turret function. Like, I don't know, just off the top of my head, fucking MODOK or Mojo or some shit, right? I think it's just kind of weird that it's like his whole thing is he places down the octopuses and they basically serve as like Torbjorn turrets or something like that, right? Not to mention he also has his trident, which, you know, the trident's usually used for like slicing and stabbing and whatnot, but he never actually uses the trident for melee at all. He just throws the trident and it teleports back to him. So it's like, I don't know, he really could have been any character. It's just Namor was just put there because like they wanted to have this sort of turret function like an engineer from TF2 or like a Torbjorn or something, but just like wanted to just use like a disposable character that they're like not really going to make a character for later. And this really could have been almost any character, right? But like I said, you could have just made, I don't know, someone like Mojo or some shit, the turret character, or you could have made like Penny Parker, the mine character, fucking Mojo or something. It really could have been anyone, and I feel like it just doesn't really fit, and they're more there just as they wanted this kind of character in the game, and they just used the disposable character that they likely would never make a character for later in the future. But personally, I just honestly don't see why they need a turret function to begin with. Overall, they're just a poorly designed mechanic that really leave no room for nuance and are difficult to balance, and nobody likes fighting against, and I feel like overall they just didn't really need to force this one in the game. And while we're already on the topic of characters and their designs, I want to give some of my, just get some things off my chest on some of my thoughts on some characters. After watching a lot of videos and clips from streams and basically just watching just a lot of content about this game to try and get an idea of what it's all about, most people's opinions, I feel like, are fairly stale, right? A lot of people seem to just say the same exact things over and over again, and no one really has any creative or differing opinions about this game. People are just nonstop glazing it, saying it's the, you know, so amazing and everything that Overwatch should be and blah, 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 blah. And basically just glazing it on how creative and unique all the characters are and this, that, and the other. And to me, it seems like a lot of people reviewing and analyzing these games, their only perspective with hero shooters are Overwatch, right? And everything here is being compared to Overwatch. Oh, this game is like Overwatch, Marvel's Overwatch, Overwatch this, Overwatch that. Everything about this game is being marketed as, oh, this is just Overwatch, but better, right? However, this might come as a fucking shocker to some people, right? A massive surprise, but Overwatch isn't the only hero shooter that has ever been made. There are certainly a lot of characters in this game that I feel like take a whole lot of inspiration from other characters from Overwatch, right? Someone like Star-Lord, right? Looks a lot to me like some kind of unholy cross between Tracer and McCree, as well as someone like the Punisher seems to be mixed sort of with a sort of soldier to Bastion, right? However, I think they definitely do a very good job of adding a lot more abilities, a lot more uniqueness, and the characters don't really seem like knockoffs, rather than a lot of these characters seem like they take a whole lot of different Overwatch characters and sort of clump them all together into an amalgamation. So these characters really perform all of these things and have a lot more depth and versatility with them, and essentially take the Overwatch roster and compressing them. Any character that you might like playing in Overwatch, you can find a resemblance of them somewhere in this game. Some characters in this game I feel like are also double down versions of the premise behind some Overwatch characters, right? Like Hulk, I feel like is more like a double down version from being a baby diva to being a mech form, right? And Hulk kind of takes that to a whole another level by having 3 layers of it. Having not only Bruce Banner, which serves as basically baby diva, but also having Hero Hulk, and then going on to the Monster Hulk, right? Overall, I do really like the design of the characters, but there's one character that really does tick me off, and that is Loki's design. And this is one that people really glaze, and it's like, oh, it's so good. Oh, Loki's so cool. And acting like this is some unique fucking design that's never been done before. However, it is eerily similar, almost completely identical to Ying's design in Paladins. Now, of course, he does have a couple different abilities from Ying, but overall, the whole concept of him and the whole way he works is almost exactly like Ying, right? And this is something that always pisses me off, is how just Paladins gets absolutely no respect. When something like Overwatch goes in and straight up copies a design for a character from Paladins, literally just a couple months after they get released, or sometimes Blizzard will just straight up steal abilities from characters from Paladins and then just, wipe their hands, call it a day. And it's so annoying that this constantly fucking happens, where Paladins comes up with an innovative, cool design for a hero, and then it's just immediately taken and ripped off, and then people go and proceed to call Paladin the cheap knockoff. And while we were talking about the topic of depth, before I kind of digressed into a mini tangent about Paladins, which I certainly am going to need to do a video on that eventually. I'm gonna pencil that in somewhere, that I need to make a full video on why I love Paladins and why I fucking hate Overwatch, because in a lot of these videos they seem to come up a lot, and I've never really made a full, concise video on my feelings about these games, right? But overall, this game, Marvel Rivals, certainly does have a lot of depth to the game, and a lot of depth to their characters, that Overwatch really just does. A lot of characters' abilities have multiple functions and do a lot of different things while having a good cohesion with their kit, and I think overall, a lot of the characters are just very well designed, and well presented too. This is something that Overwatch really, really, really struggles with. I'd say a good 50% of the entire roster is what I would consider poorly designed, and leave absolutely no room for depth or nuance whatsoever. This is an issue that I had in a previous game earlier, I think a year or two ago, called Dino Crisis, right? Dino Crisis I actually went and played the beta for, but I never actually went and bought it when the game actually released, and I was kind of excited for it until I played the beta. I made a video on it for quite a while back, and basically the general gist of my feelings and how I felt towards the game was I felt like there was almost no depth, right? Capcom had no idea how to make a hero shooter, they had no idea what they were doing, and they essentially just took a bunch of moves, slapped them on a character without thinking how they would work together whatsoever, and these moves had no depth, no nuance to them. There was really only one way to use any of them, and it just made the characters feel very lacking. None of them were really all that interesting, and that was basically the main issue that I had with the game. The game had absolutely no depth whatsoever, and had no nuance to it either. To make a well-designed character and a well-designed ability with a lot of depth, it needs to have really two things. One, multiple uses, and two, this is kind of separate, but I'm not going to bring this up, which is it needs to have some kind of counterplay to it, and can't just be, oh, fuck you, you lose, right? But that's not really relevant right now. Usually the example I give for an ability that has a whole lot of depth and cohesion that I really do like is Junkrat's Mine. On the surface, Junkrat's Mine seems very one-dimensional. It's not an ability that people really consider to be all that nuanced, but when analyzed, it actually has many, many, many different uses. For starters, his mine is his mobility tool. He needs this in order to get around the map if he wants to get to high places, and depending on how far he is from the mine and where he's positioned around the mine, this will determine the angle and where he's going to go when he blasts off that mine. Not only does this mine serve as his mobility tool for both vertical and horizontal, but on top of that, it is also a layer of crowd control as well. This mine can go and push enemies backwards off objectives, or just away from you, or it can go and push enemies off cliffs. On top of that, if even put at the right angles, it can be thrown and boop enemies and pull enemies into you and your team. Among that, which it's not the best use, but it can be used as basically a trap, as you can put it in doorways or leave it already pre-planned to basically just kind of get a little bit of damage off, as well as it has cohesion with his second ability being his bear trap, as you can throw the bear trap, throw the mine down, and then leave it there. And if somebody goes in and triggers the bear trap, if I do recall, I'm not sure if it's still like this, but at a point the bear trap did 70 damage, and the mine on a direct hit did about 130 to 140, meaning this would, if you walk into the bear trap and there's already a mine set up, you could trigger it and it would instantly kill any 200 HP squishy enemy. This is likely not the best use of it, but on defense, if you got some extra time, you can sometimes get a cheap kill with this, and especially because you don't even have to be there for the mine, because it will trigger the trap, you detonate the mine, that's a free kill. But also his best use for the mine and main use for it, you can also use it to basically shoot and instantly kill a 200 health enemy at basically point blank. If you shoot your primary fire and then cancel the recoil with the throwing out the mine and then instantly detonate it, it will instantly kill any 200 HP enemy. This one move, being his mine, gives his entire kit its depth. This is what makes Junkrat Junkrat. And because of this mine, which seems like such a simplistic tool, and in truth it actually is, it's not a very complex ability to use, but it has so many different uses, which even though it isn't complex, this gives it a lot of, as I've said, depth, which I do see this kind of premise. Marvel Rivals characters, a lot of their moves work very well together, are designed to work well together, and a lot of these abilities have multiple uses, giving all these characters many different options to approach many different scenarios, right, and giving you a sort of freedom and decision-making that you don't really get in something like Overwatch, which I do see this design in Marvel Rivals. Marvel Rivals has been really good about that, where all these characters seem to have a lot of depth and nuance to their kits, and their kits work together very well with a lot of cohesion, giving the player lots of options to approach different scenarios, and different players might approach a scenario differently even while they're playing the same character. All these characters I feel like are very well designed. There isn't really any of them that I would say aren't well designed except for Neymar. Neymar is just stupid and terrible, and I just do not like him. One of the biggest issues that I had with Overwatch is the whole counterpicking, right? Switching characters and counterpicking other characters is extremely common in Overwatch. If you play a certain character or like playing a certain character, and let's say another person goes in and picks a character that directly counters that character, you're going to have to switch. There's no real ifs, ands, or buts about it. Your guy is basically going to be useless unless someone can get them out, or you switch, right? And this can be extremely frustrating at a lot of times, as my two favorite characters, for example, are Junkrat and Doomfist for DPS, right? And a lot of times I'll come into the scenario where I'll be playing, like, Junkrat and Doomfist, and then the other person loses and they switch to Pharah. And normally, most of the time, my fucking other worthless DPS is going to be insta-locked fucking Genji or Tracer, naturally, and are going to refuse to switch. So, of course, this is going to be up to me to switch to either McCree or Ashe, allowing me to no longer being able to play the character that I like playing. And it's even worse if it's, like, not your job to deal with something like that. Like, if, let's say, I'm playing support or tank, like, let's say I locked in Reinhardt, right? And I'm going in and I'm playing Reinhardt, and then the enemy team is a Pharah. And my team is something fucking useless like a Genji and a Reaper, and both of them refuse to switch. In that scenario, someone is going to get reported. And the reason that this counterpicking game goes on and is such a massive problem, a lot of the characters in this game are very one-dimensional. They often do one thing. They have one certain game plan. There's only one real way to play this character, right? There's no real depth, there's no nuance, there's no variation on how I might want to approach a scenario. Every single person playing this type of character is going to always play the same. And one thing that I really do have to applaud the Marvel Rival devs for doing is having the balls to have Iron Man basically have unlimited flight, right? This is something that is almost, never seen in pretty much any hero shooter or any game with classes or anything like that. And it's something devs are really scared of doing, right? Having flying characters and having them being able to fly permanently, right? Pharah has a fuel system. Pharah's counterpart in Paladins is Drogos. He also has a fuel system. Characters like North Star from Titanfall have a fuel system. And this is something that I feel like in some cases, now in something like Overwatch, it would be really cancer if she could fly forever. But in some cases, like, I believe that this is how North Star should have worked from the get-go, is being able to essentially have permanent flight. And of course, having this perma flight might be dangerous. In a game like Overwatch, it would be very dangerous, right? Not a lot of characters can really do anything about that. You kind of have to have a hit scan style character in order to deal with someone like Pharah, right? You're going to need a McCree, you're going to need an Ashe, a Widow, or even a soldier, right? But in this game, it seems like the majority of characters can kind of deal with Iron Man flying around. On top of that, Iron Man doesn't seem to move too fast when he's flying around as well, and pretty much any character can essentially hit him in the sky with ranged attacks, and the characters that really can't often have very high vertical mobility as well, allowing them to basically go up there and catch Iron Man. Also, a little side note, that I do find kind of funny, in a world of superheroes where, like, half of the superheroes can fly, the one superhero that flies using fuel and has basically a jet propulsion system that would need fuel, doesn't have a fuel mechanic, and flies around freely. I just find that kind of humorous. Another thing that I feel like this game needs to be applauded about is their approach to support, and the support characters are actually capable of having, kill potential, right? This is something that really isn't seen in Overwatch, and is a big issue with Overwatch. What turns people off from playing the support role is that support characters really can't kill. And for the majority of support characters, killing is really a last priority, if even a priority at all. Now, recently, Overwatch has been basically coming all over their game and trying to destroy it as fast as possible by trying to basically rework this and make healing less prevalent, along with making the support role basically be more DPS orientated. It's not been going well, and it's just not working, but this game is really designing their characters to be built around that, similar to how Paladins is doing it. Paladins, from the very start, their support functioned a lot of times like DPS, and some support characters can even play and perform just as well as DPS characters can. However, there is an issue that is worth stating, and that is that the support has a more DPS-orientated playstyle with healing as an addition, right? And like I said, this is how Paladins works, but Paladins also has a fair amount of self-heal. You have a passive heal when you are outside of combat. Among that, there's also kill to heal and life steal as well that you can gain in Paladins. This game, on the other hand, doesn't have that. There is no passive heal, there is no kill heal, there is no life steal, at least not for every single character, right? If that is a passive ability that your character has exclusive to them, right? And instead, they are still using the archaic form of healing, being health packs. This is a terrible, terrible fucking method to have basically a self-proficient DPS, right? I don't know why they are still going with health packs. I don't know why they thought this was a good idea. Oh, because Overwatch has them, so we need to have them. You know what Overwatch has? A dwindling player base. You don't need to have the fucking health packs. Nobody likes the health packs. I say just have no healing, and your healing can really only come from your support, or have them have a passive out-of-combat heal, right, like Paladins does. One last thing to glaze this game on before I get into the concerns and the things that I don't like seeing, right, is the destructible environments, right? People fucking love these destructible environments. Everyone's videos talking about this game have to mention the destructible environment. I feel like this is a fairly interesting mechanic and leads to a lot of unique scenarios, and a destructible environment is something that's really underrated and underutilized in PvP video games. Overwatch tried to kind of dabble with the destructible environment a little bit by having one free-for-all stage, right, have a destructible floor in the center of the stage, and that was essentially it. Nowhere in the rest of Overwatch that I'm at least aware of as of now has any kind of other destructible environment or destructible walls or floors or anything like that, right? And this is a mechanic that I feel like has a lot of potential and could be very unique and interesting, and something that could add a lot of depth to the game and a lot of interesting ways of being played, that I feel like is just underutilized. And I feel like I said, Overwatch tried to dabble in it for a tiny bit and then basically just gave up, said, no, that's not a brand, we don't care about this, and didn't venture into it any further. And I feel like it could have been really cool if they tried to rewire their game to have more destructible environments, and I feel like it really could have been something there, and could have been something very interesting and unique for a hero shooter, but like I said, Overwatch just didn't really seem to care to venture on with this mechanic any further. But it seems like Marvel Rivals has taken up the torch on that and has added a sort of destructible environment, which, like I said, I love seeing destructible environments, but it's something that I feel like is just that no other PvP game really tries to encapsulate, except for, like I said, R6. Rainbow Six Siege's main gimmick is its destructible environment, and how you can work around the environment and basically use the map to your advantage for unorthodox flanks and different routes, right? Depending on your character and the tools that they have at their disposal. However, in recent times, Ubisoft just like really doesn't fucking like you and goes and says, fuck you, we're gonna rework this map and remove half of the destructible walls, and then we're gonna take away bullet holes because we hate you and you're playing the game wrong. However, in Marvel Rivals, I feel like the destructible environment really isn't taking as far as it could be, and to me feels kind of like, I don't know, Crackdown-ish, and it's more just there to kind of give a satisfaction and a fun little mechanic to add some presentation to the game, rather than any unique flanks or interesting scenarios like it is used in Rainbow Six Siege. On top of that, I feel like the maps are made to be like traditional hero shooter maps, where they're very large, they're very open, with not a whole lot of places to sort of hide and flank around different areas, which making a map designed to be big and open like a hero shooter is, I feel like just doesn't serve well. It doesn't do the destructible environment mechanic any favors. If you're going to gear the game around having a destructible environment, you're going to have to make it very tight, or at the very least have lots of obstacles that block line of sight or get in the way to be, of course, destroyed. And like I said, I haven't played the game, and all of my impressions and interpretations of the game is just from viewing other people's matches on them, right? But from what it looks like to me, there are certain parts of the map that can't be destroyed and that are permanent structures, right? And certain parts that, of course, are destructible. And over time, the things that have been destroyed will rebuild itself. And I feel like it's just this whole destructible mechanic really doesn't provide any depth to the game. This is just how I feel. There might be a lot more interesting ones that I'm not really getting all of the context for, because like I said, I haven't really had the game in my own hands. But from what I see, a lot of the walls that I feel like I would want to destroy, that I would like to break, right, just can't be destroyed, okay? For example, a lot of times on points, there are often walls that provide cover for the enemy team to walk in and be able to basically push up onto the point. The issue here is this wall is not destructible. A lot of times you see these walls, and these walls aren't destructible whatsoever, which I feel like this is, if anything, a wall that I really, really would want to destroy. This would actually give the team on point some sort of advantage, being able to have a clear line of sight of enemies coming towards the objective, as well as removing any natural cover that the enemies might have to use. On top of that, if you gear the game more around having destructible environments and you remove the environment regenerating over time, then you can make a lot of interesting characters that work around basically rebuilding the environment or putting their own structures onto the destroyed environment, right? And then you could also have another emphasis of characters that have more destructive power, that are able to break through walls easily. Characters like Hulk, or let's say you have the Juggernaut, right? And the Juggernaut has a sort of a ROM or Mauga style dash, and is able to run through multiple walls. And also, if you just made a lot more obstacles, walls, crevices, and just overall places to hide, then this would add some value to more reconnaissance type characters, which is something that I see almost no presence in this game as of now. There are really no characters that provide any kind of intel or reconnaissance whatsoever. I guess the closest thing you could say is Punisher's passive, but that's really only for him, and that's just so people can't, like, I don't know, peek him, I guess. But I think that you can make some characters that are really geared more to recon type abilities. Some character like let's say Daredevil. Let's say Daredevil has a interesting passive mechanic where he's, blind, so he can't really see, so he can only see people in a certain radius. But the thing is he can see through walls, and the more you move, or like if you're running, or if you're using abilities or doing anything, then he will be able to see you from a farther distance. On top of that, you could have, like, I don't know, like some kind of like tapping mechanic or tapping ability that allows him to basically see through walls and have sort of like kind of like an echolocation. And you can make various different characters like that are based around reconnaissance and intel, and will work well with, like I said, a destructive type character like, I don't know, the Juggernaut or the Hulk that could bust through walls and grab motherfuckers hiding and shit. On top of that, they also do have like I said, Spider-Man, I guess you could say, also has kind of like reconnaissance type ability, being his spider sense allows him to basically know when enemies are nearby. But like I said, this is something that is, I feel like, very underutilized, and that's because the environment doesn't really require this kind of nuance. As well as it's also a third-person game, which makes observation a lot easier than a first-person game, right? But in short, I feel like this destructible environment is something that they're not really emphasizing their game on. The destructible environment is more just a gimmick for flavor, something to just keep kind of like casuals appeal, I guess. More along the lines of, their team-up mechanic. It's not really a selling part of the game. It's not really something that's going to be majorly utilized. I don't see that at least. I think there definitely will be scenarios where it's like, oh, the destructible environment helped or it hurt, but overall, I feel like it's not their core gimmick. It's not what they're going for here. They're not trying to make a Rainbow Six Siege or like Crackdown or Fortnite or something kind of experience where the whole world is basically breakable. That's not what they're going for with this. But that's about it for glazing this game, right? I've given this game enough of the Gok 9000. Time to talk about my concerns and the things that I see that I personally don't like. The first thing that I see that I don't like is that I wasn't invited. But in all seriousness, just from basically an outside perspective, there are some things that I just don't think are good for the competitive nature of the game, and that's kind of concerned me in a way. Now, let me be clear here. A lot of these thumbnails and pretty much everyone playing this game are saying how amazing it is and how fun it is and how this game is so great and it's so much better than Overwatch. And I have no doubt that people are certainly having fun with the game and that people are certainly enjoying it. However, I didn't get to have fun with the game. So I'm naturally going to have to ruin it for everyone else. And all I got to really do was sit there and watch, a bunch of people playing the game, and I had to basically take notes and analyze what I saw. And no matter how you slice it, this game is going to be extremely popular. And when something is extremely popular, it of course is going to have a large esports. I'll start with some more minor issues that I have and then, go up. First of all, I'm not sure how I feel about the whole team up mechanic. Giving characters certain unique advantages just because of their arbitrary relation to each other in their lore, I feel like is a very stupid and dangerous approach to the game. Not to mention giving some characters certain things that they can only do with each other, right? For example, having Rocket Raccoon being able to climb on Groot's shoulders. If they want two characters to have cohesion, don't give them artificial cohesion. Instead, actually design them to be cohesive. If the whole premise behind Groot and the whole style behind the character is that he is going to set up walls to basically make the environment how he sees fit and essentially force the enemy to funnel through a small choke point, as well as blocking off escape routes and setting up walls to overall inconvenience the enemy, then give Rocket Raccoon cohesion to work with Groot by having him have mechanics that work well with these abilities. For example, if, like I said before, he basically is going to set up a choke point, forcing the enemies to funnel through a small area. Have Rocket Raccoon, let's say, have like a small barrage type ability that does a large amount of damage in a small focal point, but it's hard to control and hard to move, right? So it is mainly only effective when enemies are still or funneled down a small hallway, right? I would imagine it would be something kind of like Ruckus's ult from Paladins, or like, let's say, you give him a missile, and the missile is a slow-moving projectile that does large amounts of damage and has large splash damage. However, it is quite difficult to hit point blank on, and if it misses completely, then you get nothing from it, right? But if they're lined up against a wall, it's fairly easy to hit, right? You could basically utilize this, making Groot set up a wall, and then allowing Rocket Raccoon to easily be able to use this missile against people at this wall, right? Or possibly having a shot that shoots through walls. So he could shoot through Groot's walls. If, let's say, an enemy tries to maneuver around one of Groot's walls and hides behind it, and then Rocket Raccoon can still shoot them behind, Groot's cover through the wall, right? Something along those lines. If you want these characters to actually have real cohesion with each other, you make them work with each other. You design them with the premise that these two characters are going to be paired with each other, right? You don't just give them some sort of arbitrary mechanic or arbitrary buff that makes them, work together. Also, why can Rocket only climb on Groot's shoulders? Why not anyone else's shoulders, or at the very least, Tank's shoulders? I think this could be an interesting mechanic for Rocket Raccoon if you could basically pilot or hitch a ride on, tanks, for example, similar to something like Titanfall, in order to maneuver around faster. Like if, let's say, Rocket Raccoon is able to jump on a character like Venom, allowing him to basically hitch a ride and get to the point much faster due to Venom's superior mobility, or get to an extremely high place due to Venom's superior mobility. Why not allow Rocket Raccoon to just be able to climb on anyone's shoulders? Hell, why not allow him to climb on enemy's shoulders? Be like a little fucking Denizen, just climb on someone's back and then just shoot at them. But instead, it just seems like they have this artificial cohesion because they just decided due to their arbitrary lore together, right? And personally, I just don't like that. I feel like that could be dangerous. And as of now, none of the team-ups seem really too strong or really too broken. But if any of the team-ups do give any kind of real significant competitive advantage, then that could be a massive issue, right?
Poof, ICT from the future here. So recently, while in the process of editing this video and making it and whatnot, and how I've already gotten all my thoughts out there and have kind of all put them in one clear, concise video, I've been watching some other content, right? Some other opinionated content, and this is a personal thing of mine. This is a thing I do not like doing, is watching whenever a game comes out or is in beta or is like very fresh. Whenever that happens, everybody's throwing out their own opinions and their own hit pieces and whatnot. And me personally, I do not like watching opinionated content about a new game. I intentionally try to avoid any content with opinions because whether I realize it or not, subconsciously or unsubconsciously, that opinion is going to rub off on me. And by avoiding basically any kind of opinionated content and coming up with my own opinions and coming up with my own thoughts on the game, I want to make sure that those are my own thoughts. I want to make sure that these are my own opinions that I am formulating about the game, and not some YouTuber with a high subscriber count beaming fucking information into my head just because they had a flashy, fancy video, right? I want to make sure that everything I believe or my own thoughts. So I always try to avoid opinionated content, but since I already made this video, I've been watching some other content, and one of the videos I watched was the ArekkzGaming video. And in the ArekkzGaming video, one of the clips he shows has Jeff the Shark actually riding on Groot's shoulders. which means that this is not a Rocket Groot exclusive ability, that this is actually something that smaller characters can use. So as of now, just Rocket and Jeff the Shark, right, can climb on Groot's shoulders, which this also means that this is a Groot passive, not a Rocket passive. I thought it would be the other way around. But this still does not change my opinion in the slightest. I still don't feel like this is any better. I still feel like this is still as arbitrary, and the purpose that this move was put into the game, that this passive was put into the game, was to create Rocket and Groot's artificial cohesion. It was clearly made with the intent to work with Groot and Rocket together, because this is something that they frequently do in the comics and the movies, is Rocket rides on top of Groot's shoulders. This is not a new thing, right? However, as I said, I think if they wanted them to have cohesion, give Rocket real, actual cohesion with Groot. Do not make stupid mechanics like this that artificially do it. And as well as I feel like it's just as arbitrary as, you know, a team-up standard or whatever, right? It's just as arbitrary to be just like, oh, only smaller characters can ride on Groot's shoulders. Rather than, you know, if to me, that's just as arbitrary as, you know, only characters with a relationship with this character can ride on his shoulders. You know, I think, however, I don't think Groot should just be allowed to have anyone ride on his shoulders. I think it would be weird if, you know, he was given Hulk piggyback rides and whatnot. But I do think this should be geared more to maybe a Rocket passive. I think this would be cool if this was one of Rocket's passives, is he can climb on, at the very least, tanks' shoulders. People in the Vanguard class, he can climb on their shoulders and provide support that way. But like I said, I don't like this. Also, another thing, this is probably a bit of a spoiler, but in the Ackman's video, after watching it, I feel very confident with everything that I was saying. After going in and watching the Ackman's video, he pretty much says everything I say in this next part, right? However, he takes it from this perspective that it's a good thing. He pretty much says, oh, you're very fast, everyone feels very powerful, the game is very, like, loose and free and whatnot. And he takes it in as a good thing, which I feel like a lot of players will take that in as a good thing, but me personally, I take that in as a bad thing. And as someone who basically sees everything through the competitive lens, I think that this kind of direction is dangerous. But like I said, that's my issue with the game, is the game is not being created for the competitive players. It is not being created for the people who competitively play video games or competitively play hero shooters. It is being created for the casuals. It is being created for the Ackmans of the world and not me, right? And that makes me mad that this game isn't appealing to my every beck and whim.
And I feel like this whole team-up mechanic is purely 100% geared for casuals, right? It's geared for a casual level of play and not for a competitive play. Finally, let's get into my real concern, or concerns, the big meat and potatoes, the main thing that I don't seem to like when watching a lot of this gameplay, and that is, one, there's too much mobility in the game, allowing characters to move around the map way too fast, and a lot of the characters seem to be more geared around dive. 2, an overall limited level of CC, or space control. 3, cooldowns are very short, and abilities are extremely prevalent. And then 4, almost half of the roster is melee-based, or at least wants to be in very close range, yet the game is still designed like a traditional hero shooter. All of these things in combination lead to what I can only describe as a scrambly fucking mess. Starting off with number 1, and that is that characters have way too much mobility. In this game, pretty much every single character has a movement option, if not multiple movement options, as well as passive movement options are extremely common. Things like wall running, or floating, or even like flying and shit, right? And overall, characters seem to move way faster than really any other hero shooter I've ever seen. Almost half the roster appears to be dive, and characters have basically free reign to move extremely fast vertically and horizontally. This makes flanks and diving almost impossible to stop. Let me put it this way, right? You know those videos that are like, oh, how many characters in Overwatch can get across the Hanamura gap, right? Every time it's always, you know, a select few. Like, I don't know how many characters actually can, but there's a few characters that can get across it, not the majority. But in this game, I think it would be almost the opposite. There are very few characters in this game that I think, if you were able to basically replicate the Overwatch Hanamura, I think there are very few characters in this game that couldn't get across the Hanamura gap, right? There's way too much movement in, you know, pretty much any angle you want, and it's almost impossible to stop a character from just jumping on another character, right? Now, such mobility is not an issue, and I wouldn't have a problem if there was proper CC, right? If there was a lot of stun and moves of area denial, as well as, you know, things that just slow enemies down or knock them around. But that's my second issue with this game, is that there doesn't seem to be a lot of that either. There seems to be very limited uses of stun, area denial, or, you know, any kind of CC whatsoever, right? In Overwatch, there are tons of characters that are basically designed to stop enemies from just diving onto your backline, right? Characters like McCree, Mei, Brigida's a good one, Symmetra, right? These characters basically specialize in stopping, you know, enemies like Doomfist or Genji or, you know, whatever, right? All these dive characters from just jumping onto your, you know, squishy Zenyatta or whatever you're trying to defend, right? CC is something that is just overall very limited in Marvel Rivals. There are some CC moves like Hulk's stun attack, which personally I think is just not fitting for Hulk at all and doesn't make a whole lot of sense. In case you somehow don't know what it does, it basically just freezes the enemy. They're stuck in place for a couple seconds, but at the same time they also can't take any damage. I just feel like it's very random in his kit. It doesn't really fit well with him. Not to mention, I think there are better characters that could use something like this that would actually make more sense. You know, like, I don't know, some kind of time-oriented character, maybe like Cable. He has, like, I don't know, a time gun, and he shoots you with it, and it freezes you or something along those lines. This isn't a unique thing that has been just put in Marvel Rivals. This is something that Atlas has in Paladins, which is his ultimate, which is basically the most toxic fucking thing to ever exist, which is his time gun that will just freeze you for a couple seconds, basically like Hulk's sort of like a gamma stun thing. Like, but having them basically just be like frozen in time makes sense for this kind of ability, taking them out of the fight for a small period of time. Them just like being enveloped in like gamma energy, so they like, I don't know, can't move. They're like stunned, but they like don't take damage. I just feel like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. You could just have it like, I don't know, at the very least slow them down or something like that if you want it. But it just seems like a fucking unfitting move for Hulk. And I just, not only does it just not fit Hulk as a character, but also just like, I don't think it makes any sense. I just don't think it makes any sense for his kit. It doesn't seem to have a whole lot of cohesion. It's just like, you know, you could really put a move like that on almost anyone. But I digress. This is one of the few CC moves in this game, and while it might stun one enemy, it's not going to stop a whole team. And within a couple seconds, unless you are able to basically get a massive advantage or push them back to set the person in who is stunned in the center of the team, they will just rejoin the fight, right? So unless they are basically a direct threat, someone who could easily get a pick or likely has an ult already, or you can get some sort of significant advantage, this move is just not that useful in a large team fight, right? This move is just, I feel like it's just not that useful in sort of a large team fight if it's just one person. Someone like I said, Atlas, this is his ultimate, is he does this, and it is quite useful because he has 3 shots with it, basically taking out half of the team, right? So you will be able to basically get rid of the supports, get rid of the tank, and then leave, like, let's say just the DPS defend for themselves with no defense from the tanks and no healing from the supports, pick them off, and then now all that's left are these low damage tank and supports. But when it's just one person, I feel like it lacks a whole lot more. Luna Snow also has a kind of similar CC ability that freezes an enemy. It basically works the same way. She just shoots like an ice ball, and then they get hit by it, and they freeze instantaneously. However, with this ice ball, they are able to take damage, unlike the Hulk Gamma like shot thing. I don't exactly know what it's called. This ice, for the freeze move from Luna Snow reminds me a bit more like something like a On a Sleep Dart, where it's certainly a move that I do like for a support character, giving her some level of self-defense against, you know, someone diving her. But like I said, if a whole team, if you're fighting, like, I don't know, fucking Venom, Hulk, Spider-Man, and then, you know, whatever supports else, and they all jump on your cock at the same time, then freezing one enemy for a couple seconds isn't going to do a whole lot of good, right? And that's almost it, I guess, for CC moves. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of CC moves from what I can tell. There isn't really like these big AoE kind of like slowdown or just don't come through here. Things like that are almost mandatory in a way for a game like Overwatch or Paladin. And as well as, like I said, just area denial in general is not very prevalent either. There aren't a whole lot of like traps. There aren't a whole lot of like, there's no like burning flasks or long-lasting abilities. The closest thing is like Penny Parker. Penny Parker, I think, does a very good job of area denial. She basically just sets mines everywhere, and these mines do have do pretty good damage. So I think that if you are going to run some kind of anti-dive strategy, Penny Parker might be essential towards that. But Magneto and Doctor Strange, who are supposed to be these sort of traditional frontline style tank, don't provide this valuable CC that you would need, that these characters normally would have to be basically a brick wall, right? Probably the closest thing is Doctor Strange's Maelstrom Madness, which I guess at least provides a deterrent from getting close. As, like I said, Doctor Strange can basically set up his shield, go and block a bunch of attacks, and if you try to push past Doctor Strange or get through him, he has his Maelstrom Madness, which does a large amount of damage, and basically is just a deterrent, right? It's to keep people from getting close to him and his team. The thing is I feel like it doesn't matter that much that either Doctor Strange or Magneto have the shield, given a lot of these characters' vertical mobility combined with their horizontal mobility. It doesn't really matter for a character like Thor, or Star-Lord, or Spider-Man, or Venom, or even Hulk, who can basically just jump over these shields straight onto the back line, and now Doctor Strange or Magneto or whatever is like, what the fuck? What do I do now? While they're like absolutely giving Luna Snow backshots. Someone like Overwatch's Reinhardt does a very good job of space control due to his large, strong shield, but also he is able to keep enemies from running past him because of his large hammer that, you know, pushes enemies around and does large amounts of damage if you can get close. On top of that, he has his Earth Shatter, which serves as a CC, which can prevent a push before it happens, or stop a push as it happens. On top of that, you also have old Orisa. Now she's been reworked and changed a lot, but old Orisa was also sort of a traditional shield tank, and she had some things that could help against dive, right? For example, one of them was her little sucky sphere, right? She shot a little orb, and it would pull enemies to that orb that were close by. This can help prevent at least a little bit to help get an enemy off one of your allies, right? Sigma as well has decent crowd control, right? Not only was he a very strong shield tank, But on top of that, he had his rock, which stunned enemies, so it could prevent a dive, and was also particularly very strong against D.Va, given that D.Va could not defense matrix this rock, right? So he could just boom, throw the rock at D.Va, and then, stop her in her tracks, which was fairly useful, especially for focusing down a character like D.Va, which was very essential, right? D.Va was a very popular character that was used in a lot of dive meta comps. As well as Sigma also does have his ult, which could work very well too, because it basically will freeze the enemies, lifting them up, and doing 50% HP, which can have its uses as well, just to give some of your backline or DPS or whoever is being targeted a bit of a fresher breath air and allow them to back up and reposition a little bit. And a lot of characters, this was just this was just the shield tanks I mentioned, but a lot of characters had some kind of, at least a little bit of CC that they could try to do to at least help themselves or a teammate to get a person being targeted off another guy, right? But this game, that's almost non-existent. There's not a whole lot of that. The only way that the majority of characters can seem to get someone off another character is by raw DPS. There doesn't seem to be a lot of slowing, stun, or overall just area denial abilities as a whole. This seems to me very intentional. What it seems like to me is that this is the direction they want to take this game in, and they want this game to be, I guess, more aggressive, you could say, right? They want the game to always have a whole lot of action going on. They don't want these deadlocking scenarios where, you have your team against their team with their big shields and all of that. This is the same thing that Overwatch was trying to get away from, was the strong shields and the massive amounts of healing, and I feel like this game is trying to basically do the same thing, and they want this game to have a whole lot of action. They want you to basically run in with you and your team and go and fight and beat up all the other guys, right? And that, I feel like, is the approach that they're trying to take this game, and that is, I believe, very alarming, as, guess what? That's the approach that Overwatch has been trying to take for the last couple of years now, and that has been what is directly causing Overwatch's downfall, and them to basically just destroy their game. And while I'm saying all this, I feel like space control is going to be overall an issue. There's going to be not a whole lot of space control, not a whole lot of area denial, not a whole lot of structure, and it's going to just cause a mosh pit of basically just attacks and moves, and that's what the game's going to be. It's going to be a scrambling match, as I've said. However, as I've said, the issue with this, and not actually being able to play the game and experience it for myself, is the level of play is to some degree kind of questionable. Now, remember that this is a closed beta, and the people who are able to play this game, and the people who have gotten keys for this game are people who can promote the game, right? So the majority of these people touching this game are game journalists. Now, game journalists aren't exactly known for being the best video game players, right? And a lot of times when watching the gameplay, it was almost like reviewing like bronze footage for fucking Overwatch or something like that, where it was just overall, like, there was a lot of decisions being made and a lot of errors. That's like, why would you do that? What world did you think you were going to win that? What are you doing? It's like, you're just like, it would just be like the whole squad is on payload, and then you'll just see like a Black Panther fucking just run into the middle, like just jump into the middle of the fucking squad, and then just start swinging hands without using any abilities. And it's like, one, how did you get this close? And two, in what world do you think this is going to work? With like no team behind him. And I saw that constantly. Every 30 seconds, almost every 30 seconds in pretty much all the gameplay that I saw, someone somewhere lost their fucking mind. And I'd see constantly there were just like guys at fucking low health, and nobody would heal them. There would be like two or three supports on the team. There would be like no healing, and it's like, this guy is like legit at like 25 HP. Nobody's doing anything, and then he still decides to just engage the enemy and fucking dies. I saw that a couple of times. That was very prevalent. Overall, it just seemed like a whole lot of lack of cohesion and collaboration, and just teamwork at all, or any sort of game sense. It was a lot like reviewing bronze footage, and I get that this game is like, it's not even new. It's not even out, right? This is a closed beta, right? But given how similar it is to Overwatch and how close it is to Overwatch, I feel like if you played Overwatch, if you have any experience in hero shooters, if you have any experience in Overwatch, if you're decent in Overwatch, all that skill would carry over. It doesn't take 100,000 hours and a fucking genius to know not to jump into the center of an enemy team and try to 1v5, right? It doesn't take a fucking genius to know that. And whatever skill you have there, I feel like it would immediately cross over, right? Any micro or macro that you have from Overwatch is going to cross over to Marvel Rivals. When you actually give this game a bit of time to actually have a proper ranked mode and sort of let people develop the meta, I think the game is going to look very, very, very different. I think one of the big issues is there's a lack of coordination. One guy would go in, nobody else would do anything, and then that guy would just die by himself, right? But I feel like later down the line, when people start to actually figure out the game, the meta starts to be figured out, I think dive is going to be extremely, extremely prevalent. Characters like Hulk, Spider-Man, Venom, right? And already these characters, maybe it's just because they're fan favorite characters and people really like these characters just as they are, but already this is predominantly what I'm seeing in most of the matches that I see, right? Most of the matches that I watch, there's always a Hulk, there's always a Spider-Man, there's always a Venom. These are very, very, very popular characters, and I believe that this overall lack of CC is done on purpose. I think this is what the Marvel Rival devs want. I don't think they want people to be stunned. I don't think they want people to be slowed down or lose control of their character, and they want this very high mobility, high octane, fast gameplay. The reason I believe that they went and did this is because this is a common frustration with a lot of beginner / low level players, right? A lot of beginner and low level players find characters like Mei, for example, extremely frustrating. They don't like losing control of their character, which is understandable, right? And I do believe that this is something that needs to be taken in and taken into consideration and isn't always good in all cases. However, mechanics like CC are a necessary evil, as you need some kind kind of deterrent or some kind of way to prevent enemies from just jumping on your team or jumping on your backline. As I said, a lot of beginner, low-level, and even intermediate players really do not like, being stunned or slowed or being in the slightest discomfort whatsoever, right? And when something feels like there is no counterplay to it and there's nothing you can do about it, this of course causes frustration. And frustration causes people to quit games, right? And that's of course what they don't want. Marvel Rivals doesn't want beginner and casual players to go in, play their game, and then quit the game because they're frustrated that they're getting stunned too much or whatever is going on, right? An example of this is McCree's Flashbang, which I used to stun enemies, and how it would work is you just throw it out. If they're close enough, they get stunned, you go, whoa there, and then you fan the hammer, and this would essentially instantly kill any 200 HP character, right? So the vast majority of the roster would instantly die. And like I said, a lot of people go and they'll point fingers and say, oh, that's not fair, he just instantly flashbangs me and kills me, and there's no counterplay to it, there's nothing I can do when I'm stunned. Yes, there is absolutely nothing you can do when you're stunned. You are fucked. But here's the issue, is that you put yourself in that position in the first place. You position yourself to be close enough to McCree where you could be stunned. And that is the point of McCree, and that is the point of his flashbang. The point of the flashbang is to act as a deterrent. It is a reason that you cannot just jump on to, their support, like let's say a Ana or a Zenyatta or whatever it might be. The reason I can't just jump straight onto them as Doomfist is because there's a fucking McCree on there, and if I jump onto him, then the McCree's gonna flash me, and then he's just gonna fan me, and I'm gonna fucking die instantaneously. If I am in that scenario where I jump on the support and I get flashed and die, I made a mistake. The mistake I made there is I tried to aggress the support. I cannot do that while McCree is there, or while McCree has his flashbang up. And this goes for a lot of characters with strong CC, similar to that flashbang. The mistake you made is often you got too close. You position yourself wrong, and you put yourself in that position to be stunned, to be CC'd. And you should have played that better. You should have worked with your fucking team instead of jumping onto the Ana with a fucking McCree on him. However, at a low level, at a casual level, and even to an intermediate level, people don't want to play that way, right? If I want to play dive, if I fucking want to play fucking Genji or whatever, right, and be a worthless retard on my team and provide no support to my team whatsoever and beg for healing like a little bitch, right? If that's the way I want to play, I'm going to play that way, and you cannot stop me, right? And that's how a lot of people are. And because of this, when there is someone out there who, like, let's say, prevents you from just jumping onto their fucking backline and killing all their supports and then fucking Ana, nano me, Ana, nano me, Ana, nano me, I need a nano, and doing all that shit so you can try and get play of the game and then teabag, when you are directly prevented from doing that shit, and the enemy team provides a counter that prevents you from just doing whatever the fuck you want, a lot of people end up getting frustrated, they bitch and whine on Twitter, and then beg fucking Blizzard to change that, and say, oh, there's too much CC, the CC's too strong, this and that, and then because so many low-level players or intermediate-level players are begging for these changes, then Blizzard decides, fuck it, we're going to give McCree's flashbang erectile dysfunction, and now all it does is remove your movement abilities. Go fuck yourself. And this is the issue with modern Blizzard. This is the issue with modern Overwatch, is they are trying to basically appease everyone. They are trying to reduce frustration, and because a lot of people find crowd control and stuns and all that good stuff frustrating, they are trying to reduce and make these things less punishing. They're trying to give you more options. But you already chose, and you already had the option to jump onto the McCree. You shouldn't have been there in the first place. And that is the overall issue. It's not that McCree is broken, it's that you're just stupid. And in a game like Marvel Rivals that seems to take an approach to not have all this crowd control, in combination with having all of this mobility, it seems like they do not want to cause frustration and are trying to appease a lower level player base, appease the majority. The majority of players in all competitive games across the board are bronze. Most players go in, they pick up a game for, a month or two, right? They play it with friends, they go in, they play some ranked, they get set in bronze, and then they move on to the next game and don't touch that game ever again. And then they go and watch Kai Cenat, right? That is the majority of people who play video games. Most people in, doesn't matter the game, unless the game is providing a large amount of rank inflation, like Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8, then the majority of people will be placed in bronze. The majority of people in Street Fighter 5 are bronze. The majority of people in Overwatch are bronze. The majority of people in League of Legends are bronze. The majority of people in Tekken are Brawler, which is essentially bronze. The majority of people in Rainbow Six Siege are bronze. Now, I don't know if all of these things are exactly correct, because in recent times there's been a big push to make everybody, the average, be gold. So they've been causing, a lot of recent rank systems have been adding emerald ranks and giving all kinds of rank inflation and whatnot, so that the majority of people end up in gold rather than ending up in bronze, to make everybody feel happy. But in a proper rank system, most people, and for the longest time, most people, when they play the game and put no effort into the game, end up in bronze, as it should be. If you do not care for a game, if you do not put in effort in the game, if you do not put any time into a game, you should be close to, if not the lowest rank, right? Very few people spend all of their time dedicated to one game and mastering one game and getting to a high level. Not a lot of people go and get diamond in any game, period, much less multiple games, right? And because the majority of players are bronze and casuals, this leaves the game devs with a bit of a dilemma, right? Should they balance the game for the highest level pinnacle of play, for pro play and very high elo, or should they balance the game for the average person playing the game who's, just playing on a fucking Dell laptop and just trying to have a good time and a fun experience? And personally, I believe that games should be balanced for the highest level of play. play. Because what is low-level play but high-level play with a shit ton of fucking mistakes? The game that a bronze player is playing is no different than a game that a pro esports player is playing. The game is the exact same game with the exact same rules. The difference is the people at the bronze level are playing with the majority of the choices that they make, and the things that they do are mistakes. And this idea of trying to balance and make decisions about the game based around low-level and casual play is the downfall of pretty much every single competitive game I've ever seen in my life. All of these games have all failed for the exact same reasons, and I have seen their descent into failing for the exact same reasons. And the reason that these games fall and have a dwindling player base is because they are trying to captivate an imaginary audience of these casual players that are going to stick around. So they make choices and decisions that make them happy, instead of making choices and decisions that make the game actually good and playable at a high level. Every good competitive game needs limitations. In chess, I can't just go and place any piece I want anywhere I want. I can't just take a pawn and move him all the way across the board. That's not how the game works. I have set rules that I have to follow in order to play this game, and I must obey the rules, because if I just feel like, oh, I feel like I should just move the pieces wherever I want, and I think the game should just be played how I want to play it, and I just want to move this piece over here or whatever, then there's no strategy to the game. There's no point to the game. The game has no limitations. You're just moving pieces around. You might as well just be playing with fucking toys. And competitive games are no different. There must be limitations put in place in order to have a game with a decent amount of competitive integrity. There must be some rules. There must be some balancing. And in recent time, there has been this weird, strange model of having all this freedom in your game, right? You need freedom and all these choices and whatnot. However, the issue is there is such thing as too much freedom. There is such thing as too much freedom that causes too many problems. And by basically not having any kind of crowd control and trying to like scrub that from the game and try to reduce it as much as possible so people can have, you know, all the freedom they want and have full control of their character at all times and can move around and whatnot, right? By doing this, you are basically removing any deterrence that there might be and essentially allowing high mobility, high damage characters to basically just run around and do what they want, and offering no real counterplay to such a thing other than just raw, straight damage. But the issue is the enemy team is also just giving out raw, straight damage. And what this causes is that when the only real utility or thing going on here is just raw, straight damage going back and forth, there's no strategy in this game. This game doesn't really have a point. It is chess where I can move the pieces wherever I want. This is just something that has plagued video games recently, which is this design philosophy of why you should buff and not nerf. And I think this game really was trying to like make every character feel extremely super powerful and so strong and whatnot. And I just find this ideology of, oh, you should buff and not nerf to be really fucking stupid. And this dumbass ArekkzGaming has done irreparable damage to the gaming industry as a whole and should be immediately taken down. And the people who made it should be beaten with a hammer, drug out in the streets like Mussolini, right? I've seen it too many times to too many games that they're trying to encapsulate this dumbass imaginary fucking audience while also trying to support some fucking esports scene. And in the end, they end up just shooting themselves in the foot and making nobody happy. This is what has happened with Overwatch. This is what happened with R6. This is what has happened to a lot of games in the past where they just really can't decide which one they want to do. They're trying to cater to high level and make this big esports scene and make this big fucking spectacle of it while also trying to make the average player happy and stick with their game. But the thing is you just can't do that. You can't make both work. You can't appease the casual audience and appease the esports because they're playing separate games. The characters and strategies that are good at low level aren't necessarily good at a high level, and vice versa. And there are some characters in gaming that are essentially designed around human error and exploiting human error and are basically knowledge checks or noob stompers, as you might consider them, right? And these characters are just not going to do well at a high-level play against the majority of people. But a low-level play, as I said before, is the same exact game as high-level play, just with mistakes. And if you were to balance the game around what low-level casual players want, essentially what you are doing is balancing the game around mistakes. Oh, what are common errors and common mistakes that people make? We're going to just try and fix that so you don't make any mistakes and you don't feel so bad. You're essentially going in and trying to make a game and balance a game for people who aren't playing the game properly. And I can't help but feel that this is what Marvel Rivals is doing. That Marvel Rivals is trying to appeal to a casual audience. It is trying to appeal to a beginner audience. It is using a lot of things like, you know, these team-up mechanics and unique character interactions and all this stupid fucking shit, right? While trying to have a lot of freedom and looseness and mobility and speed. People like speed, right? And not having a whole lot of CC, not having ways to stop things. There's no way to stop things. If I want to play the game I want to play, so I'm just going to fucking, you know, go in with Spider-Man and I just want to punch them, blah, 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 and not giving people tools in order to act as a deterrent or in order to stop people from doing these things, right? In order to stop people from just running in monkey and attacking. Now, as I said with the gameplay, a lot of people are running in monkey and trying to attack and they end up just fucking getting back shots and dying. But give it some time when people become coordinated, when they start targeting certain people, when they start targeting certain enemies, and you get people, you know, using voice chat and text chat, people in Discords, and they're coordinating their strikes well, it's going to be a large, scrambly, dive type game is what this is going to be. This is my major fear. And this is what Overwatch is trying to do. This is Overwatch's approach. This is why Overwatch has been coming inside their game and destroying their game, right? And this is the reason everybody fucking hates Overwatch, is because they're trying to make these dumb decisions to basically have a less emphasis on a team-based game. You have weaker shields, right? Shields have much less health than they had, back in Overwatch 1, back at the launch of Overwatch, right? Healing is reduced as well. You can't take as many hits, so teams as a whole are less important, as well as they are trying to slowly reduce the amount of CC, reduce the amount of stun, and reduce all of these things in order to make it feel more, well, for lack of a better term, scrambling. And Marvel Rivals is doing the exact same fucking thing, yet people are going around and saying, oh, Marvel Rivals is everything that Overwatch should have been, and Marvel Rivals is so awesome and great and amazing. You know what is everything Overwatch should have been? Fucking Paladins. But I'm not getting into that yet. That's for another day. And the truth is that you do not, and I repeat, you do not need to appeal to a casual audience. Because the truth is casual players who are just looking for a good time, players who are just going to jump to one thing to another, depending on how, popular it is, right? People like that who watch Kai Cenat, right? These people do not care about your game. The moment that there's something new, the moment that there's something fresh, they are going to hop on that in a heartbeat. They do not care about your game. They do not care about the longevity of it, and they are not going to stick around. It doesn't matter what you do to appease them. You can make all of the changes, all the scrubby changes that they want, and casuals truly do not care about mechanics and the way that the game is functioning and the strategy of the game as much as these devs believe, right? Because the truth is you want to know what casuals care about more than anything else in the world, rather than the gameplay or what's frustrating or not, right? What casuals care about more than anything else is cosmetics. They care about presentation. They care about the game looking nice. That is what gets their sale. And that is also what keeps them playing. That is why Fortnite is the most popular game of all time. Fortnite is the most popular game of all time, not because of its innovative, interesting gameplay. There's nothing innovative and interesting about this fucking game, right? A battle royale isn't a fucking unique concept. Being able to construct objects isn't a fucking unique concept. Nothing this game did was remotely unique. But you want to know what made this game the most popular fucking game? One, it was free to play. It was like one of the very first free to play games, right? But two, cosmetics. A lot of fucking cosmetics and nice presentation. You cannot deny that this game is presented very nicely. It is bubbly, it is fun, everything is animation, everything has effects, and there are tons and tons of cosmetics and things to buy, and cool costumes and characters and all kinds of wacky things. The game is geared towards a casual audience, and they know exactly what casuals want. They don't care about the game. They don't care about the competitive integrity of the game. They don't care if something's frustrating, right? What they care about more than anything is, oh, who's going to be in the next battle pass? Same thing can be said about games like Moron Combat. Moron Combat is the worst fucking fighting game to ever be invented. I'd rather spend a day playing fucking Kianta than playing Mortal Kombat, right? Moron Combat is basically a fighting game designed by people who have never played a fighting game before and have no idea how a fighting game works in the slightest, right? The game is clunky, the game is gross to play, the animations are fucking terrible, despite what the Game Awards might try to gaslight you into believing, and the characters have no real game design or strategy. They just put moves on characters that they think are cool, and there's constantly questionable balance and changes, and I'm convinced that not a single person in NetherRealm Studios has ever played not just a fighting game, but a video game in their entire fucking life, right? The thing is Moron Combat is the most highest selling and the most popular fighting game of all fucking time. And the reason it's the most popular fighting game of all time? Cosmetics, presentation, it fucking looks nice at a first glance, and then you kind of see the animation, and it's a bit dubious at that. And this is what Street Fighter 6 has nailed. Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8 are fucking terrible games. They're terrible games with terrible mechanics, and they are both made exactly the same, right? They both have the same exact issues and the same exact flaws, except for, I mean, I haven't seen it now. I think it's at mixed reviews or mostly positive, but Tekken 8 was at, for a little bit of time, was at mostly negative reviews. Well, Street Fighter 6 always stayed at very positive to overwhelmingly positive reviews, and people loved Street Fighter 6, people applauded Street Fighter 6, but people hated on Tekken 8 and despised Tekken 8, even though these two games had the exact same issue. Heat and Drive oftentimes serve the exact same fucking purpose. But the thing is people despised Tekken and not despised Street Fighter 6 because Street Fighter 6 was presented nicely. Street Fighter 6 had a character customization. Street Fighter 6 had a lot of flashy effects and cool characters. Tekken 8 didn't have those. Tekken 8 was lazy. Tekken 8 had incomplete animations. They are still using the same animations that they used in the 90s and early 2000s. Tekken 8 did not have the same level of presentation or single-player content or any of these things that casuals want that Street Fighter 6 had, and that is why it has negative reviews. And that is why Street Fighter 6 has positive reviews. And the same thing goes for the reverse as well. Some games that are extremely innovative, that are extremely good, with a lot of effort and care put into them, right? That have constantly amazing ideas and are extremely fun to play, get shit on and disrespected constantly because they have terrible fucking presentation. An example of this, one of my favorite games of all time, Paladins, which I have mentioned multiple fucking times in this video, because Paladins is, in my opinion, the best hero shooter that has ever existed, including Marvel Rivals, but yet people call it a cheap knockoff. It gets roughly 2,000 to 3,000 players a day, and nobody gives it any respect or any time of day, even though it is constantly coming up with new characters, with innovative ideas, and a lot of interesting, fun mechanics put into that game that work well in a competitive environment as well. Yet this game gets no presentation, this game gets no respect because it has terrible presentation. A lot of the win screen doesn't even fucking work right. It just pans to like a random area on the map, very strangely. A lot of the assets don't load in, the textures are fucking gross and sloppy. The whole game is sloppily put together, even though it is an amazing fucking game when you actually get to play it. But because of its poor presentation, people do not like it. But I have no doubt that Marvel Rivals will have a large, extensive list of cosmetics. I have no doubt they have infinite of cosmetics to choose from. They have all kinds of different versions of characters from different universes and all kinds of different things that they could put on characters. I have no doubt that they have an endless list of cosmetics and amazing cosmetics, and this game already has amazing presentation. The game looks nice. All the animations look smooth. Everything about this game is fucking beautiful, and it pretty much already has everything that Overwatch has and more already. It has custom modes. It has a beautiful menu. It has, a narrator. It has everything that you would need for presentation. It has unique voice lines and character interactions. It checks all of the boxes for perfect presentation. And as long as they keep providing the game with more of that, then casual players will keep playing it. The majority of players that don't even play ranked and just go in and play quick play or whatever, right? They do not look at balance patches. They do not care what you put in that balance patch. People do not care if you nerf Punisher's cock and make it smaller. This game already has everything. The marketing is great for the game. The game is beautiful, and it doesn't need to try to appeal to some casual audience. And along with that, and this is the third issue that is all kind of related to the mobility in a way, is that the cooldowns are too short. There are too many abilities. The cooldowns are way too fucking short. Pretty much at all times, you're gonna have one of your abilities off cooldown. And generally, how you can think of it is whatever a character might have had in Overwatch, half their cooldown. And that's how it is in Marvel Rivals. Marvel Rivals, in short, has about half the cooldown rate for a proportionally the same move from Overwatch, right? For example, we have Groot, right? Groot essentially has 3, like, May ice walls, right? He has 2 of them that provide extra damage and are like these thorny walls, and then he has one that is this big shield wall that provides shield and more like support to the team. But in short, these are essentially May ice walls, right? He has 3 of these. On top of that, the cooldown for, I can't recall the cooldown for the shield wall, but the cooldown for the thorny wall seems to be around 6 seconds or so, right? May's ice wall, on the other hand, as of now, since I recently checked it for this video, as of now, it has a 12-second cooldown if you just boom, pop it up and release it, and if you wait for the whole ice wall to go away, it has a 6-second cooldown, right? As I said, Groot essentially has half of the cooldown of May's wall, not to mention he has 3 of them. That also provides other utility other than being just a wall, which goes to my earlier point that they're trying to appeal to a casual audience, because a lot of times casuals have no resource management. They can't manage their cooldowns, and they just kind of throw abilities out willy-nilly, and then their abilities are on cooldown, and then they get frustrated when they can't spam their abilities anymore, and it seems they want to reduce this, right? They always want your abilities to be up, so your little retarded cousin can just click all of the fucking abilities really quick, and just keep doing that over and over again. However, like I said, this is bad. There needs to be, as I said with the chest, there needs to be some limitations. You can't just always have your fucking abilities off cooldown. There are very few points in this gameplay where it's like, where all of the abilities are on cooldown, right? Some characters are worse than others. It really depends, but I think the cooldowns definitely do need to be longer. It's far too chaotic, and I think it is essential to have a game where you are thinking about resource management, where you are thinking about your abilities, you're thinking about your cooldowns, and I think it's very sloppy that they just have it where basically you don't necessarily have to think about your cooldowns, and they're almost always on, right? And with all of this being said, here is my very, very, very final issue, and I am fucking exhausted, and that is that a large amount of the roster is melee orientated, yet the game is still designed as if it is a hero shooter. This is an issue. For context, Overwatch really only has 2 melee heroes, right? Being Reinhardt and Brigitte. Technically, you could count 4 if you were counting Genji and Torbjorn, but Genji's melee is reserved only for its ultimate, and Torbjorn, if you're using his melee, you're going to get reported. However, this game has a large amount of the roster being melee orientated, right? You got Magic, you got Spider-Man, you got Venom, kind of. His is a bit longer range, but I guess it's technically still melee, but it seems more like something like Sigma's, little fucking orb things to me. But I guess technically it's melee. Thor wants to be melee, but he can't throw his hammer. You have Black Panther as well, and even some characters, like I said, Magneto. Magneto kind of has a bit of a melee thing going on, but he's not predominantly melee, right? A lot of characters in this game are geared towards melee. Oh, and not to mention the Hulk. I fucking forgot the Hulk. But like I said, a lot of characters in this game seem to be more geared towards melee, which I don't appreciate. And with so many characters that are geared around being melee, this causes a problem. Not only is melee in a hero shooter difficult to balance, but there's also no real counterplay or skill to melee either. and doesn't leave a whole lot of room for depth, right? It's kind of just, oh, if they get close to you, they're going to be hitting you. Example of this being hard to balance is Genji was originally supposed to be a melee-only hero. Like his primary attack was supposed to be his sword, but the thing is the Blizzard team found this difficult to balance, right? If it was, 3 to 2 hits, it would be far too strong given his, extremely fast mobility, right? And if it was, 4 or more hits, then it would be way too weak, right? Why would I play a character like Genji, who is going to take 4 or 5 hits to kill someone when I could just play McCree? And a similar thing is seen kind of in this game to some extent, where it's like Black Panther takes around like 5 hits or so to kill an enemy, while like Hela, if she just hits you twice in the head, you're fucking dead, right? So why in the world would I play a character that limits themselves with melee that is going to do less damage to a character that doesn't limit themselves with melee and has good range? Now, with a character like Reinhardt or Brigitte, they don't have that fast speed that Genji has. So they can't really just like run up really quickly and then like get a pick off real quick and then run back to the team and whatnot. Reinhardt doesn't have that kind of mobility. He serves more as a wall, his hammer is more of a deterrent. If he is close to you, you are fucked. That is the end of the story. You're not really supposed to get that close to Reinhardt, and you should avoid at all costs getting as close to Reinhardt as possible. As a fight, you're not really supposed to win. Now, of course, this issue with Genji was later fixed, as they did make a sort of melee kind of DPS hero, being Doomfist. Doomfist was orientated around a sort of melee design. However, the way that they approached it was by, instead of just making it where he gets close to you and punches you a bunch of times, he has to use combos. He uses his abilities to combo the enemy in order for him to kill them, right? And this is the approach that the Marvel Rivals team took. And Black Panther, Spider-Man, Thor even, and Magic are like, all about combos, right? These characters use a similar premise to Doomfist in order to provide damage. They don't just swing. They don't just hold down, left click and get results like Reinhardt. But as I previously stated, the cooldowns are very minimal. They're quite small, and of course this is going to cause the issue, especially with characters that are based around having combos with their ability. As combo style characters like Doomfist, if he had very small or no cooldowns, he would be extremely strong. He'd be extremely broken, and this is how a lot of these characters are, right? Being this melee-orientated combo type characters, and I do kind of find it weird where it's like, it's a superhero game, right? And superheroes are known for punching. The majority of superheroes are, punching and using melee martial arts and stuff, and are cool and awesome, right? That's how superheroes are. Yet I do find it weird where it's like some characters, and this was kind of the issue I had with this is like one thing with that like one MHA fucking battle royale thing, where it was like kind of weird where they try to force all the characters to be ranged. Yet it's like almost no characters use ranged attacks in MHA, and not very many characters use ranged attacks in superhero stuff in general. It's like it's more just like a one-off thing, like they throw their fucking shield, right? But Captain America doesn't predominantly fight just going and throwing his shield over and over again, right? If I'm playing as Captain America, I want to feel like Captain America. And Captain America, he's he's gonna punch and hit with the shield and whatnot. But instead, it's like they're forcing him into having a sort of ranged role and just throwing his shield over and over again, right? Which is like not what he does. He doesn't just constantly just fucking rapidly just toss his shield back and forth. I think what would have been better for the development of this game, and it's certainly far too late to do this in development, and they already know what they're going for. They're going for a hero shooter. They're going for Overwatch, right? But what I think would have been probably cool, and is something that I've really been yearning for, is a more Souls-like type game, right? A Souls-like PvP, or a Sifu PvP, if you will, right? Having a game that is basically like, imagine Sekiro or Sifu, being a multiplayer competitive game with different characters with different abilities, and you have your normal attacks. You have like maybe a light and a heavy and a block, right? And then you tie in with a parry and whatnot, and you have like feints and stuff. And then of course you add in a couple different like special abilities and whatnot geared towards what these characters do. And I think if they did that and made this game more melee oriented, make this sort of a PvP Souls-like, which I think is something that's really has a whole lot of untapped potential in the competitive gaming industry, and it's something I personally am really yearning for, because it's not really something that has been done. The only thing that is like that is you got PvP Dark Souls, the Dark Souls PvP mode, which is archaic and terrible, and then you have For Honor, which is archaic and terrible. And I feel like other than those two games, there has been no real approach to, Souls-like PvP, which is such a vast, large genre that people love and sells very well. Games like Sekiro, games like Elden Ring, games like Ghost of Tsushima and whatnot. Yet we don't really see a PvP version of these, right, with this style of combat. And I think with a little bit of elbow grease and a little bit of passion, there could be really something there. And you could even, to some extent, cross this with ranged aspects. Have both a melee and ranged aspect. Have some characters be geared towards melee, some characters be geared more towards ranged, and have maybe sort of like kind of a dynamic where in Souls games you always lock on to the enemy, right? But when you're outside of locked on, you have like more like let's say ranged attacks, right? And then when you lock on, you turn to melee mode. This would be, I think, something similar if you've ever played the game Fury. Fury is basically designed like this, where you start out as not a FPS or a hero shooter, but you start out as basically a bullet hell. And when you get the enemy to low health, you go in and you attack them, and then you sort of have this kind of Souls-like type gameplay where you're dodging, you're looking for openings and blocking, parrying and whatnot. And I think if you were able to basically turn this concept into a PvP, I think something like this, something like Marvel Rivals, something like a hero shooter would be the perfect platform to make this game. and still having all of the same stuff, having abilities for mobility and having guns and whatnot, and all the same neat stuff, but crossing it with a layer of melee combat, and having some characters like, let's say, Star-Lord or the Punisher, who are more geared towards range, and then other characters, like Spider-Man or Venom, who are more geared towards melee, and having a sort of cross blend between both. But overall, that's about it. I don't really have much else to say. I'm certainly hyped for this game, but like I said, I'm also concerned. I think that they want to gear this game towards a casual audience. That's what they want. That's what they're doing as of now. Now, of course, this can always change. Maybe this is their marketing strategy because they want this game to be geared towards this casual audience as of now, because there is, of course, no competitive play. There is no competitive scene for this game. It's not out yet. And they know that, the vast majority of people who are going to be playing this game in the beta or the alpha are like game journalists and whatnot, as well as, when the game first comes out, there's going to be a lot of people who don't play Overwatch or hero shooters in a large casual audience, right? And maybe that at launch or a little bit into the game's life, then they will rework some characters, add some more CC, and make the game less geared towards casuals. But as of now, they kind of just want publicity, and they want to bring in casual audiences, and they want the game to feel very loose. They want the game to feel very free to appease that, as I said, I've said this a lot, man. You can make a drinking game out of this fucking video. Casual audience, right? However, the thing is I said this before last time with Street Fighter 6, and look how that turned out. I said, oh, this game's bad, there's no neutral, they're trying to appeal to a casual audience, but hey, they're just doing this right now because it's the beta, and when the game actually fully releases, I'm sure it's going to be great, and they're going to have neutral and footsies and all that kind of thing, and it's going to be awesome. And that didn't happen. It's been about a year and a half, and the game still has no neutral, the game still has no footsies. It has the same issues it did when it launched, and there's been hardly any changes. So I don't know. Like I said, that's what I said with Street Fighter 6, and it didn't happen. So they certainly this could be the direction that they want to go. And if so, I feel for the competitive integrity of this game, right? I don't like this approach. And overall, I find it kind of funny. I find it kind of ironic that all the videos coming out recently on Marvel Rivals is all about how great Marvel Rivals is, and how bad Overwatch is, right? And that, oh, this is going to kill Overwatch, this is the new Overwatch, and this is everything Overwatch should be. But like I said, the issue is it has the same exact issues Overwatch has. It's doing the exact same things as Overwatch is. It's just put on a fucking silver platter and looks presentable, and it's new right now. So it kind of just gets under my skin a little bit, It kind of just annoys me, because to me, it's just Overwatch. It's just another fucking Overwatch. Nothing here is changed. But I don't know. I'm very excited. The character I definitely want to play the most is Dr. Doom. I can't wait till that's released. I'll definitely make a video when he's released. Because that's certainly probably the character I'm going to gravitate to. As long as my hopes for Dr. Doom is he has his primary fire is hidden missile, right? And every time he shoots his primary fire, a missile comes from the floor and he goes, hidden missile, and he shoots really fast, and he says it multiple times, and it's like extremely loud, and he shoots so fast that the voice line clips into each other, and he's just constantly going, hit a missile, hit a missile, hit a missile, hit a missile, and it's deafening. It's deafening and maddening. If that is how Dr. Doom is, then I'm fucking in. Otherwise, he's lame, and I don't want to play him. But yeah, I'm certainly hyped for this game. That's pretty much all I gotta say, to be honest. Peace.